Welcome back to Become a Calm Mama. I'm your host. I'm Darlene Childress. And this episode might be a bit of a rant because I recognized, as we have been talking about matrescence on the podcast, that this feeling that comes in matrescence, this transformational, transitional time, is likened to adolescence, and the insecurity and the transition and the confusion and the overwhelm that comes in adolescence often is mimicked in matrescence. It's a period of time where you're on shifting sand. You don't know who you are. You don't know where you fit. You don't know who you're becoming. And I recognize that as that happens for women, like a mom, it's also happening in her peer group. And I wanted to have a conversation about how your peer group, the other moms around you, might be going through their own period of matrescence and how they might be acting in ways that feel like high school, that feel immature, that feel like teen drama, that feel just like very dramatic, and how this often happens in matrescence and in early motherhood. So I invited my friend Danielle onto the podcast so we could just talk about it and normalize that mom cliques exist, that there's a lot of mama drama going on, especially in elementary school, a lot of gossip, rumors, just nastiness. And I wanted to address that on the podcast and have a conversation about it so that you don't feel like you're going insane if it's happening to you. And also just kind of a word of wisdom to all of us that are moms and some ways that we can support each other and be more loving and kind. So listen into this conversation with my good friend Danielle. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah, this is fun.
It is fun. Okay, I'll just start.
Okay.
Okay, welcome Danielle to Become a Calm Mama podcast. You've been on here before.
Hi, Dar. It's always nice to be on this with you.
Yeah. Okay, so I called you today because I had just finished an interview with Dr. Angel Close, and I talked to her about matrescence.
Which is a
And
word I had never heard before.
right, so I'm going to define it for you. And
Okay.
what I wanted to talk to you about is mom cliques and other bullshit,
Right.
essentially, which is what I decided to title this episode. And I was like, who do I want to talk about this with? And I thought of you because we sort of raised our kids adjacent to each other. We were in the same elementary school and, same community, but had different
Right.
experiences and different friend groups, but we, crossed over.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, I know you would have some opinions about women, moms, in
Right.
these earlier stages of parenting, like a little bit in preschool, but really kind of early elementary school, the dynamic between moms.
Like kinder through third grade and
Yeah.
how you find your people at school.
Yes. And kind of all of there's a ton of energy and drama and emotion in that period of time when you're like, I think so matrescence is this idea that becoming a mom and being in motherhood is a transition, that you are going through an identity shift and a transition where you're letting go parts of yourself from the past and finding out who you are now that you're a parent.
Sure.
And it's likened to adolescence.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like, how when you're an adolescent, you start as a child and then you end up as an adult in that period of time, which is
Right.
roughly like 10 years or whatever. And your body goes through huge changes, your identity shifts, like you find out who you are. That's what it's true of adolescence. And
Yeah,
in
it's all
many ways,
trial by fire.
for sure, yes. Like you just get thrown into this new stage of life as an adolescent, and then you're like, you just go through it. It's typically tumultuous, right?
Right. Right.
Um, and you come out on the other side an adult, a different person. Like, you're no longer a child. And when with matrescence, it's similar in that you start out without having a child, and then you go through a process, and then you are a mother. And that isn't, there's that postpartum period, but then there's the actual longer period of time where you're in like an identity shift. And as a mom, and I think you can relate to this, it's like the in matrescence, it's not really defined like is in terms of a time period. When I was reading about it, it's like there's kind of this emerging matrescence and then middle matrescence and then late matrescence. So kind of the stages of motherhood, really.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, right. Like you're kind of in this process. It's kind of like as soon as you figure out this version of motherhood, it kind of shifts on you because the children
Right.
change, but you change alongside. So you're kind of always in this metamorphosis. And anyway, so I finished the interview with Angel, and when I had read her book on called Unburdening Motherhood, where she introduced this topic to me, this concept of matrescence, which I've always thought of as motherhood. That's been
Right, right.
my language around it. Um, but while I was reading it, I was thinking about how my own personal story of becoming a mom and like what I learned about myself in those early years and the insecurity I felt and the confusion and over I had, just like my adolescence, like my matrescence was also, a thing.
Sure, sure.
Which I think we can all relate to. But I was thinking about how other women are also going through matrescence.
Well, every woman in
Every woman.
motherhood is going
Yes.
through it. Yeah.
And I started to think about how I'm going through this massive transition. I'm insecure. I'm confused. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know who my people are. I don't know where I fit. I don't know if I belong, especially as an adoptive mom, because I always kind of had like I came through the back door to motherhood. So all the swapping
Right.
pregnancy and war stories
Right,
and all
right,
that.
right, right, right.
So I kind of, and I'm a person who naturally doesn't think that they belong in any group. So I had brought all that with me.
Sure.
And, and so I was just thinking about how if I'm feeling, I didn't think about this back then. This is why I wanted to talk to you about it. But if I was feeling insecure and confused and not sure who I was, all the women that I was around in that period of time were also going through the same thing.
Yeah, of course.
But we don't identify because we don't have this word matrescence. We're not looking around and being like, well, they're also a teenager. Or,
Right. I was thinking while you were defining it, and you said, well, I've always just thought of that as motherhood. But it actually is helpful to have more language and more vocabulary about the experience of motherhood, the phases of it, the things we go through as people, um, as we mother, right? I mean, whatever that version of mothering is for you, to have more language about it is, I think, super helpful. Because motherhood is such a generic term, right? So when we're speaking about the word matrescence and equating it to adolescence, right? I mean, I think, sure, we all have certainly, the preschool years and then the early school years and then the high school years, these different periods of time in our mothering process where we feel insecure. Are we doing this right? Are our kids doing this right? Are we making the right decisions? Are we, parenting through our values? And I mean, obviously, you know this, hence, hence your career and your podcast. But I mean, I think having more language, the more language there is around that, the better it is for future generations of mothers.
yes, because we can identify. In the previous episode, I talked about how a lot of times when a woman is going through this transition in the different stages of their child, it's often like child referenced. So we say, oh, that's because you have a 2-year-old. Oh, that's because you have a high schooler. Oh, that's
Right.
because you're in those, middle years where you're doing a lot of driving.
Right.
Instead of we reference like the stage of the child instead of the stage of the woman,
Right.
and how that can be, we can maybe narrate it from the stage that you're in as a mother and what that challenge could be like for you, because it can feel a little dismissive when you're like, well, that's what it's like to have a
Yeah.
3 year
Well,
old.
it's right. It's the terrible twos or, but what does
Yes.
that mean for you as a person as opposed to what your toddler is looking like?
And how long have you been a parent? Like, this is what it looks like to be a parent for 7 years. This is what it looks like to be a parent for 17 years.
Right.
Like,
Right.
you get better at like understanding yourself in this role. But in the beginning, of course, you don't know. You don't know who you are as a mom. Like, I think it's very challenging even as you get older, but you can kind of start to see, even when your kids are grown, you can go like, oh, I was this kind of mom, or,
Right.
oh,
Right.
you know, I enjoyed this type of play, or this is the kind of things we did as a family. But you're building the car as you're driving it. And yeah, having that label is so helpful, matrescence. So now I want to talk about I think, a negative part about matrescence.
Sure.
And it's this idea that you, as a woman, are surrounded by other women who are also going through this transition. And in the same way that teen girls act towards each other because they feel insecure, because they feel unsure, because they don't know who they are, they're trying to find their people, they're trying to belong, they're trying to fit in. There's traits of teen girls. And I have noticed those same traits in moms when their kids are like 5, 6, 7, 8-ish, like
Oof,
sometimes 4, but
that is rough.
say again.
That is rough. Yeah. Yes.
But it's
Sure.
insecurity. It's like, okay, so what I've noticed is that when when your kids are in preschool,
Hmm.
it's like you're in war together. Like everyone is like, "Oh my God, my kid does that too." You're comparing to figure out like, is your kid normal? Like, what are you supposed to do? When should you to potty train? Your kid's sleeping through the night. It's like,
Well, that it's very physical. That
yes.
that time is very physical parenting, right? It's
Mhm.
very pick them up, put them down, put them in the stroller, put them in the car seat, put them down, bend down to put their clothes on, bend down to, pick them up to put them on the diaper changing table. It's very physical. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, you kind of you're exhausted, you're
Mhm.
weary. It is like a daily battle with a very physical component. And then I think when they're no longer in diapers and they're no longer in strollers and you send your kid off to school, there's a change in parenting. You're going from a very physical parenting to a more emotional parenting, right?
Yeah.
And you're starting to wonder, am I doing this right?
Yeah. I agree. I also kind of think that I'm just thinking back for myself, like all the moms that I met when my kids were in preschool, it seemed like we weren't in competition with each other for place in terms of a hierarchy within the subgroup. Like there was no competition in like who's popular at this preschool. I think everyone's just getting in, getting out. It's just like you're trying to manage your own child, like you're chasing your own kid around. It doesn't feel quite the same. Maybe um that feeling that starts to come online when you start to think about your child's social group. Maybe that's what I'm thinking about, is
Right,
like
right.
this period when now there's a lot more social engineering happening on behalf of the kids, in that who are they going to have play dates with? I feel like when the kids weren't in elementary school, I felt a little bit like, which mom do I want to hang out with? Like a little bit
Right.
more like, who do I vibe with at the park? Or like, who's chit-chatting with me out front while we wait for pickup? It,
Right.
like they had their little buddies, but they were not, it didn't really matter necessarily who the children played with,
Right. They weren't forming tight social connections.
nor was I trying to manipulate who I wanted them to be friends with
Right.
in those
Yes.
years.
Well, and also I think preschool is fairly transient. It's a short period of time, and everybody knows that in 2 years or 3 years max, you're going to be moving on to a school that's K through fifth or K through eight or K through 12, right? A much longer period of time. And so in preschool, it seems it's almost like you're dating. It doesn't really matter that much, right? You're not making like a commitment to these people that this is who you're going to be social with your kids for the rest of your life. Maybe you are, maybe people do build lifelong friendships in preschool, but that's not necessarily how you're feeling when you drop off your kids at preschool. And then I
Yeah.
think when you get to kindergarten and the kids start forming a social bond and you start realizing that you're going to be at this school for 5 years or 6 years or 8 years or 12 years, right? Then it's kind of like, well, who are who are my kids preferring? What group am I going to be in? Are these going to be our longtime friends? And
Are
suddenly a
they
whole,
good? Are they good? Are these the people we want to be with? I think there starts to be that cattiness comes in because you're right. It's like I think that's a really good point about the way that you look at the relationships. And when you're saying, lifelong friends, I think the children rarely make a lifelong friend in preschool.
right,
Only
right,
maybe if they continue living next door to each other or going to the same school or it's like very close family friends and you vacation together, you keep that relationship going. But you're right, for the most part, those preschool friendships are are definitely transient in the child's life. And when you're a young mom, you don't really know that necessarily, but you can sense that everyone's going to go to different elementary schools,
right. And in
most
fact, that's a
likely.
big conversation in preschool,
Yeah, that's
right?
when it starts, I think, is like what school are you guys going to? And that's I think when we start to feel that feeling of like where are the cool kids going?
Right. Or like, is that someone that should I be sending my kid with that kid? Or
Ugh.
do I want to be with that family moving forward? Like, yeah, it starts to happen. You start having these conversations because you know that it's a big commitment. It's the next several years of your life, right?
Yeah. And then we add this matrescence thing where you're insecure and you don't know where you fit. So it's like, I think what we do is take that insecurity and we want to make sure our kids are set up well or like they're with the right kids or the right group or we're in the right group. And that then lends itself to judging and criticizing and looking around at other moms and being like, well, she's a hot mess, or I don't want to be around her because I hear how she talks to her kid, or oh, that kid's really bad. I don't want to, that kid hit my kid, so we're not going to play with them anymore. And it starts to be uh, like a lot of criticism, judgment, observation, and then you get a comparison. Then you get into gossip. You get into like the moms talking to the other moms about that kid or that mom. Yeah.
I mean, I think it just keeps going. I think that, in today's world, you have the working moms and the non-working moms. You have, the sports moms and the dance moms versus the, you know, uh, robotics moms or you have like it just keeps there's
But
like,
I think that gets defined later in matrescence. Like you figure out what kind of mom you are because of your kid or
do
your
we ever
family.
really figure that out
No, no, no. But like
though?
define yourself as like I'm a dance
Yes,
mom.
yes,
I'm a
yes,
guy, I'm a
yes.
boy mom. I was a boy mom. So
Right, right.
that was like, I did boy things. It wasn't even like I was a parent of like sports kids. Like we
Right,
just
right.
like, just very, so
Sure.
and then I hung out with boy moms, right?
Right.
But I guess what I'm trying to get at is like I remember, I don't know what happened, but when my kids were in kinder and first, the I was in a friend group. My kids were in the same friend, like they got into a group with the kids, and the moms were cool, and I got into the group with the moms. And it was fun. Like I got invited to mom's night out with them. We always hung out at the park together when early release days happened. And I felt like I belonged. I was like, this is so cool. There was some moms that had kids. My kids were just one grade apart. So some kinder, some first. It was great. And then one day I was sitting at the park and it was only wasn't that long into the year. And I realized that all of the moms had done something earlier that day. Like they had
Mm.
done some scavenger hunt birthday party thing for one of the other moms. And I was like, I wasn't like, what are you guys talking about? I just was like, kind of trying to figure out what they were talking about. And then it hit me like everything in my body. I felt like I was in high school again. I just was like,
Mm.
oh my God, all these moms are doing stuff and I'm not invited.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh my God. I felt like I had like a giant zit on my nose or something. I felt like really an adolescent feeling.
Right.
And I did not know what was happening. And then I started to realize that I was being excluded for a variety of things. And then one of the moms I found out there was this big rumor that my son had stolen something at his birthday party and that she had told all these other moms that my
Oof.
son had stolen this thing and that they didn't think that they should play with him anymore. Like my son and me were being excluded. They were at a clique. They let me in for a minute. I don't know which mom mean girl decided I wasn't part of the clique anymore. I got
Right.
pushed out and then my kids started to get ostracized.
Right. Well, sure, because they're being left out too, right?
Well, it's like I don't know if it was a combination as I'm the bad one and my kid or both of us or we're a combo pack or what. And it was so painful that period of time because I had a friend group that I was newer to the school and it was just kinder though. So it wasn't like I was that, everyone was new, but some people had been there the year before. And I didn't know how to be. I didn't know who
Right.
to,
Right.
I still wanted to have my kids stay connected on some level because they weren't completely pushed out but I could tell the moms didn't want me. I was like, I just felt like I was in high school. And as I've talked about this story with other moms, they have shared with me similar things that have happened.
Sure.
And I I resolved that feeling and healed and found a wonderful friend group outside of that group and I've never looked back. It was great. It worked
Right,
out
right,
fine for
right,
me.
right.
But in that transition period, when I'm like, I'm being mean girled, I'm being excluded, it was so painful. So when I was reading matrescence and then thinking about, oh my God, this was other women who felt insecure about their own child's place. And like, I've talked to those women since then,
Right.
and they're all like, no one's like necessarily acknowledged that they pushed me out of the group, but they are all less insecure now. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Right.
Like they're all of our kids have grown up and like we were in high school together and I don't know, the friendships flowed in and out, but those early years you don't trust that like I don't know, everyone's gonna be okay.
Well, yeah, and I think that a factor there, is that if there's a quote unquote bad kid, right? doing quote unquote bad things,
Mhm.
is that going to rub off on your child?
Yes, that's the fear, right? So
Right. That's the fear that
my
people are
naughty
having.
stealing kid who did not steal it, by the way, I just wanted to clarify because like it did not happen.
Right.
Lincoln was naughty and he got into lots of trouble
But
for
that
sure. But
wasn't
this
one of the
one
time.
was
Yeah.
not the case. Um, and that friend group, he was in with them from first to 12th. All of us stayed in the same. So
Right.
we all know how everybody turned out,
Right. Right.
So um, anyway, it's like because you have if your kid is slightly divergent or working through emotional regulation, Lincoln is severe ADHD. I don't know what was going on. Impulse control, first grade. I mean, he was all over the map. And yeah, there wasn't grace extended to me by the other parents. They weren't like, wow, you
Right.
look like you're having a hard time raising this boy. Like, no one, everyone is like,
Right.
run away. Don't let your kid be with the bad kids
Right.
because
It's
they're going
very
to be
fear
bad.
based.
It's
Very fear based.
also, it feels, that's what I guess it feels like insecurity.
Right.
It,
Right. Because if this is contagious, I mean, I think we could talk about documented cases of social contagion where people are, kids are blamed for creating havoc in communities, right? But the thought of if this behavior is contagious, I don't want my kid catching it. And also, if my kid does catch it, do I know how to handle that?
What if I have a bad kid? What if my kid starts stealing? What if I have the one who
Right.
takes the shampoo bottle at the bounce house
Oh
birthday
my
party
God.
and puts it all over the slide?
Right. But also, like, yeah, what if that's my kid? And also, I don't even know how I would handle that, right? I don't know how to parent that. I'm just going to avoid it so I don't have to parent it.
Right. Or
But then I
you
think,
look and go, that must be a terrible parent. That mother of that
ah,
kid.
yes, that your kid is a reflection of you as a parent,
Yes,
right?
like if you have a bad kid or a kid who like, sneaks other people's snacks out of their lunchbox or whatever, that's because you are too restrictive or everybody is blaming everybody. Everyone's judging everybody because we're also at this young stage of parenting, you don't know how to do it.
Right.
Then you also everyone thinks that no one should misbehave. Like we've in parent
Right.
education created a concept that if there's misbehavior, something has gone wrong.
Right. Well, even if there's like, if your child has emotional pain, it's clearly the parent's fault.
Yes, right. It got to be something going on in that house.
Right.
Right.
I mean, yes, right.
hmm
So
hmm
then I think it's so interesting because I think that we have tried to create a culture where we recognize that kids do go through painful experiences and they have a lot of emotions, and sometimes they're really big, and sometimes they lead to behavior that isn't great behavior. And we've done a great job of creating language around that and acknowledging that that happens to children, but we haven't gotten past the fact that all of that is obviously lies at the feet of the parent, right? Like
hmm
every child's outburst, every child's pain, every child's misbehavior, every child's tantrum is because the parent is doing a bad job.
Yeah, right. We definitely still have um, that blame there, and I think moms perpetuate it with each other. Um,
Oh, yeah,
you know,
for
and
sure.
and I guess the reason why I wanted to have this conversation is because I want to have moms recognize from a compassionate lens that other women are going through it too, and they're trying to figure it out too. And I know everyone is really scared of how am my kid is my kid going to be okay? Or is my kid going to be cool and smart and attractive and athletic and
And
successful?
are
Like,
we going to mess them up?
yeah, so we better not put them in social groups that are bad. Like we have a lot of anxiety. We do a lot of social engineering, and that is a normal thing in parenting because you want to give your kids the best opportunity you can. But making other women, hurting other women in the process and gossiping and spreading rumors and judging and criticizing and shaming and blaming is not the way to do it. Like it's very painful. And I think if women can realize, because we always say mom, mom, mom. I'm like, we're women. Like
Right.
like in matrescence, almost like I'm a mom. Hey, mama. Like, mama, I'm guilty of it. It's like actually, hey, woman who has children.
Right.
Um, it just feels that if we understand matrescence and we understand that we're all going through this transition and we're all a little bit nervous and scared and we're trying to figure out what's best for our kid, that we can make decisions that work for our children, but we don't have to be cliquey. We don't have to act like teenage girls and talk a bunch of shit and get into big old WhatsApp group chats and take people off group chats and exclude them and have birthday parties where 14 girls get invited, but there's 15 girls in the class. Like being a little bit more aware of the impact that that has. I just think if we can build a little more awareness, it might help some people not get hurt.
Yeah. I mean, I think uh, I also think that if we encourage people to be inclusive rather than exclusive, that they are enriching their lives and the lives of their children in a way that they don't necessarily can't even necessarily foresee,
Mm, I love
right?
that.
If
Hmm.
you operate from a point of um, fear and exclusivity and um, I think then it's detrimental to you. You get less perspective, less people to understand what this mothering is all about, um, less input for yourself as a woman, as a mother, and also less of that for your child.
Hmm.
And you're actually like doing the opposite of what you hope for your child, right? You hope that you're building empathy with your child. You hope that you're teaching your children right from wrong. You hope that you're instilling values. But if you um, keep your circle tight and exclude certain kinds of moms or certain kinds of kids, you're actually doing a disservice to your kids by not exposing them to all the different types of people that are out there.
Yeah, and teaching them exactly like also, well, what do you think was going on? What was the impact of that behavior? Like,
Right.
why do you think they did that? You know, what would you do if you were in that situation? Like, you can use it as teaching and growing and yeah, exposure and I guess I want to add, it's like you don't have to invite everybody to everything. Like that's not, it's not
No, of
possible.
course not. That's
Um,
clearly not. But I think that we do have a, I think bullying has been at the forefront, and we have a lot of thoughts on bullying and where it leads to with kids. And um, we've done things like create a buddy bench, right? Where the kids who feel lonely or isolated or bullied can go and sit on it, and someone and the kids will come and sit with them, right? But then if they're going home and their moms are doing the same thing to those same kids, what is the point of the bully bench?
Buddy
We're
bench.
buddy bench. We're just really farming out the parenting to happen at
To the
school,
kids. Yeah, and
right?
putting that pressure on the
On the
school itself to model the values and things like that, but not realizing at home we're maybe not actually modeling the values we want to be.
right,
Hmm.
right. I mean, I
Yeah, I was
think
thinking that about the buddy bench before you even start talking. I was thinking, God, we almost need like a mom buddy bench, or just even visually thinking of like recognizing that the mom who you want to reject it might be just struggling. And
right.
you don't have to become best friends or invite them to every, mom's night out and book club and things like that. But being lovely, being kind, not talking shit, not being part of the rumor mill. I know every mom who's in any of the younger elementary school, there is so much drama. There are so much group chats in the PFAs, the PTAs, like a lot of bullshit, a lot of shit talking. It's not a kind place, and it can be very painful. And why is it so unkind? Because people are insecure, right?
Right.
It's it, and they're not sure what they're doing. So, yeah,
I mean, I think this is a great conversation to be having. I think it's very culturally relevant. Did you watch All Her Fault?
yeah.
That was such an interesting demonstration of that, right? These two women who were working full-time moms and they were like so desperate to have a friend, right? That's how they met, drinking a glass of wine in the bathroom at a school fundraiser where they were like, oh my God, get me away from some of these women.
Hmm.
And, obviously, it's an extreme caricature of what it's like, or not, maybe not. I don't know. It's been a while since I've been in elementary school, but I think that, yeah, I mean, if we don't want kids to be bullied, if we don't want our kids to be the bullies, if we want our kids to feel that they're growing up in a safe community, we have to demonstrate that.
So beautiful. It's exactly what I want the takeaway to be. So thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I think that it's just an extension of parenting, really, right?
And we're all in the motherhood stages. We're all trying to figure it out. And the more kindness we have for ourselves about that, the more self-compassion we have, the more compassion we can have for others. And then that does impact our kids. It's like, if this is the type of parent you want to be, and you want to raise kids who are kind and compassionate and empathetic, yeah, you're right. We have to practice it
Yeah,
in in the communities that we find ourselves in. Yeah. All right. Thanks, friend, so
of
much.
course. I love these conversations on and offline. So
Yeah.
anytime.
Yeah. And I do want to just tell anyone listening, like, get yourself a Danielle, get yourself, like, I've talked about my Tiffany's and all my various Kristens. It's like, get your real people that you feel safe with and that love and appreciate you as you, and they love your kids and they see your kids for them, like what they are. And yeah, just
A
work
hundred
at
percent.
finding your people. Hmm.
And by the way, I mean, like you said, we raised our kids adjacent. We were not in the same mom clique, so to speak, but we always had a very open, we always had this kind of dialogue.
Hmm.
And so even though our kids weren't always hanging out together and we weren't always hanging out together, we were having these types of conversations. And yeah, get yourself a Darlene. The more the more people who have a Darlene, the better. The better.
Same, same I feel about it, Danielle. All right. Thank you.
All right, friend. Talk to you later.
Hey, Mama, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, I want to encourage you to do two things. The first is go to my website, calmmamacoaching.com, and get a copy of the Stop Yelling cheat sheet. You'll get a step-by-step breakdown of the most important tool I teach, which is the pause break. And you'll also get 40 ideas to reset your body and balance your nervous system so you don't have to yell at your kids. You can get a copy of that, again, at my website, calmmamacoaching.com/stop yelling. The other thing I'd love for you to do is go to Apple Podcasts and rate and review this podcast so that other moms can discover empowering and helpful, practical parenting strategies, just like you did today. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. It means a lot to be in your ear every week and to support you on your parenting journey.